Welcome, welcome, friends. It is Tuesday, July the 21st, 3 weeks through the month. Did I say January? I said July. Pretty sure I did, right? July 21st, 3 weeks through the month. Feels like July is just flying by. This is Hurricane Hub Live. I'm Chief Meteorologist Tim Pandagis, and today we've actually got a storm to talk about in the Atlantic, and now we've got a hurricane in the eastern Pacific, so a little more activity out there in the tropics. Tropical Storm Bertha formed yesterday, putting an end to our 32-day stretch without a named storm in the Atlantic basin. This is located in the northern Gulf, and this evening it is slightly stronger from when it developed yesterday. And out in the eastern Pacific, last time we spoke, we were discussing Alita. That's long gone, and Fausto has built in to replace it, and that is strengthened into the first hurricane of the season for the eastern Pacific. Thankfully, it's well away from any land. Let's start off in the Atlantic. Here is a satellite presentation of Tropical Storm Bertha. So remember, 39-mile-per-hour winds or greater is a tropical storm. We're now sitting at 60 miles per hour as of the 8 o'clock advisory from the National Hurricane Center. What you're looking at here is infrared satellite imagery. And I like to use this to start things off because this is taking the temperatures of the cloud tops. And why that's important, especially with tropical forecasting, is the stronger, more intense thunderstorm activity that we typically find near the center is highlighted quite nicely with this color scheme. The darker colors here, the blacks and the dark maroons, and then eventually the whites that show up there are the coldest cloud tops, meaning they're the highest up in the atmosphere, the strongest of the thunderstorm cells. But something interesting probably grabs your sight here, grabs your attention, is that the center of Bertha, as highlighted from the Hurricane Center's recon missions in this, is on the northern periphery of all the convection. This storm is highly sheared. And despite that, it is still able to hang on to an intensity that's a moderate grade tropical storm. Gusts up to 70 miles per hour. But again, those gusts and the strongest of the winds are being found well displaced from the center to the south over the open waters of the Gulf. This overall, for a wind and rainfall flooding scenario, is good for land areas. However, the forecast track that I'll show you in just a little bit is not so good in regard to storm surge, because we'll have a prolonged period of onshore winds kind of piling up the water into places that don't need to see a storm surge, like New Orleans. We could be talking 3 to 4 foot storm surge, even though it's not all that much of a strong storm. Let's switch up the imagery now and look at visible satellite. We got to go back a little earlier because the sun is setting, so we're not getting as good an image, but this still tells the same story. Look at how displaced this storm is. We're looking at the undercarriage, the skeleton of Tropical Storm Bertha here, the low-level circulation completely exposed on the north side. All of the convection, the kind of milkiness of the satellite imagery here is the storm blowing on up and the tops getting displaced farther to the south because we've got north to northeast winds coming up in the highest levels of the atmosphere that's blowing the tops off of the thunderstorm clouds and tilting the system. It's not vertically stacked. Vertically stacked systems from the surface to the mid-levels to the upper levels ventilates more properly and is usually able to take full advantage of the conditions that are present. Overall conditions, despite the wind shear, warm waters, moist mid-levels are in place. It's just the wind shear is really giving this a run for its money. But again, despite that, it's still got 60-mile-per-hour winds, and it's still a tropical storm and has been now for 24 hours. Now, since it's so close to land, we already do have tropical storm warnings in the orange there from the panhandle of Florida all the way up into southern Alabama, Mississippi, and, of course, into portions of southern Louisiana. Farther to the west, tropical storm watches that will likely be upgraded to tropical storm warnings. So here's the forecast track coming out as the 5 o'clock track advisory. The 8 p.m. was just an intermediate advisory. We'll get any changes to this track, although it's been pretty straightforward for the last 24 hours. But if there were to be any changes, that would come along at the 11 o'clock advisory. So already the intensity has overperformed what the Hurricane Center was expecting. It's up to 60-mile-per-hour winds. It was expected to max out around 50 miles per hour, so it's already 10 miles per hour above that. Expected to remain over water for the most part for the next 12 to 18 hours. So some more intensification is possible, but again, remember, it's combating that wind shear, so it's up against that. So likely maintaining or even weakening its intensity a little bit, but drifting due west. Kind of an interesting track because typically we're tracking storms like we did with Arthur, our first named storm of the season, that was moving from the southwest to the north and east, typically how we see storm movement, west-east. Not this go-around, the reason being, if we've got a dome of high pressure sitting in the middle parts of the country, and the wraparound flow from that is coming in out of the north and then northeast and pushing this along off to the west. And that's going to continue that way, moving pretty much along the Gulf Coast, tracking maybe just inland in southern Louisiana. And if it's over land for a prolonged period of time, we'll see a rapid weakening of this system down to 40-mile-per-hour tropical storm by Thursday afternoon. So still hanging on to a tropical storm, and then building into southeast Texas, perhaps even the low-level center, moving right over Houston, Galveston Bay, and then inland to Texas. Now, this is not great because you've heard about all the flooding in central Texas, adding tropical moisture into that situation with possibility of more heavy rainfall is not the greatest. Of course, we'll still have the wind shear, and I think, as I'll show you on Futurecast here, a lot of the heavier rain will be shoved down into South Texas, so they may be saved from that, but we'll see how things play out here. But this is the storm track as it looks right now. Now, with this type of track, we're going to walk through here the different hurricane quadrants, because I talked about how this is not going to be a big deal in terms of wind and in terms of rain, for rainfall totals in terms of the southern Gulf Coast. Okay, they're not going to pick up a half foot of rain from the system. All the heavier rain will stay offshore. However, with the storm's trajectory moving from the east to the west, you have to look at the storm movement. So this is the coast. Okay, this is going to be the imaginary coast of Louisiana. It's moving parallel to it, so its winds are getting blown onshore. And the right front quadrant of the system, depending on its movement, is going to be throwing up the worst of the storm surge. That quadrant typically brings the worst of all hazards: winds, tornadoes, surge, and flooding. In this case, we're going to be talking about the surge, and that's going to be blowing it all up into New Orleans, southern Louisiana, southeastern Louisiana here over the coming days with that storm projection. I mean, look at the contour of this coastline here, and with Bertha right here, the wind's coming onshore, so we'll be looking at some storm surge potential here of up to 4 feet. And as you know, New Orleans sits below sea level. Any water getting pushed up to the mouth of the Mississippi and into Lake Pontchartrain, not great. So up to 4-foot storm surge here. So despite it being a heavily sheared system, it's still going to bring some pretty moderate impacts in terms of some storm surge. But again, wind shouldn't be terrible. It's just going to be the prolonged onshore flow that's going to pile up that water along those areas. So here's how Futurecast sees things. We've got the storm rolling, and you can see the storm center there. All of the rain, all of the convection heaviest rainfall, see it staying well to the south. We've got some tropical showers maybe building up on the north side of things, but not much. Heaviest of the rain staying south. Center on the modeling here takes it right over maybe Plaquemines Parish into southern Louisiana. And then the center of it staying well to the south along the coastline and then moving into Galveston Bay. Still heavily sheared, still the surface low, surface circulation exposed, and then notice all of the heavier rainfall here as we get into Thursday night gets shunted right into southern Texas, South Texas, Corpus Christi down to Brownsville. South Padre Island area there, seeing some rainfall from the system decaying as it moves inland. So that should be good news for central Texas. Now let's go back and look at a history of Bertha. I mean, you know, we recycle these storm names unless they're retired. Bertha has not been retired, but there has been several instances of very strong Berthas. There have been 2 instances that it became a major hurricane. And there was one back in 1996 where it was a major hurricane, maxed out as a Category 3. You can see this track here. Thankfully, when it was a Cat 3, it was moving just to the northwest of Dominican Republic, or northeast of Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico. And then it moved inland and it actually became a Cat 2 right again before making landfall in North Carolina, and then built up over our area here in southeastern Virginia, northeastern North Carolina, and actually moved up along pretty much the I-95 corridor up into New England. Now, I want to draw your attention to this iterance of, or last, I guess I don't even know what you would call it. One run here of another instance, that's the way to put it, an instance of Bertha back in 2002. And I want to show you the comparison close up here. So here is the forecast track from the National Hurricane Center for this instance of Bertha, 2026 tropical storm. 2002, very similar area, and then it tracked right up and over New Orleans. It was a tropical storm at its maximum intensity, moved up and then built back down and then moved again off to the west. Similar weird track from east to west. And then the second I saw this developing, it reminded me of 2019 Hurricane Barry. So I plotted that as well. Kind of developed in the same area, northeastern Gulf. It kind of petered along, festered for a couple of days, was heavily sheared as well, looked very much like Bertha does on satellite imagery, with a north wind out of the upper levels, completely shearing it, exposing the low-level center. And then just before it made landfall well to the west of New Orleans, it peaked as a Category 1 hurricane, made landfall as a 75-mile-per-hour Cat 1. Now, we'll see what this one does. Does it peak another 15 miles per hour and become a Cat 1? Unlikely. But that also wasn't forecast. Actually, it was forecast for Barry to be a Cat 1, and we were just waiting and waiting and waiting on it to happen. But I was actually down in New Orleans at our sister station there, helping them cover Hurricane Barry as it was moving on through. And I remember it being a similar scenario. It was breezy. We had some showers, but the worst of it was well down to the south. And with the landfall well off to the west here, there wasn't a whole lot in terms of storm surge. So kind of dodged a bullet there back in 2019. So we saw the development of Bertha on the 20th, so close in line with our climatology of our second named storm of the season. That comes typically around July the 17th. So we knocked another name off the list here. We had Arthur, a low-grade tropical storm. Bertha, maximum intensity so far, up to 60 miles per hour. Now, tropical activity in July starts to get a little more active as we get towards the middle parts to end of July. Not all that much more active, but look at the ramp up that happens, especially by mid-August, and the peak of the season is typically right around September the 10th. Now, today's Tuesday, so we did get the update from the Climate Prediction Center for the 2- and 3-week outlook. This takes us through the end of July, first week of August, and once again, nada out there in the Atlantic basin. So we had some close-to-home development, Northeast Gulf here, but the rest of the basin is dormant. Eastern Pacific, low chances here of some more development. Again, we've got another area when we talk about the Eastern Pacific right on the heels of Hurricane Fausto. Jumping out almost to the middle of August now, so we start to see a real ramp up in activity right around August the 15th. This takes us almost there. Dormant in the Atlantic still. Eastern Pacific, even there, not too much going on. Typically, when we get a very active Eastern Pacific, the Atlantic is quiet and vice versa. The Atlantic heats up, the Eastern Pacific quiets down. But not a whole lot going on in the Eastern Pacific either, but the Atlantic remains quite void of any storms. Another reason for that is a lot of stability in the mid-levels of the atmosphere thanks to some Saharan dust that continues to just come off the coast of Africa, but it is picking up latitude. Now most of that is coming along and north of the Cabo Verde Islands, and that should start to help open up the main development region if we get any healthy African easterly waves to come off the coast there and kind of seed this area. Plenty of warm water to work with, anomalously warm through the subtropics, anomalously warm in the main development region, but again, we've seen warmer years than this. We have the warm water every year, just it's not overly impressive this go around. In the Gulf, you got the warm water there, but certainly have an abundance of it in the Eastern Pacific. I mean, look at the anomalies here. We're talking 2 to 3 degrees above where it normally should be this time of the year. And there's the signal for the growing El Nino. It'll just grow in intensity as we go through the remainder of the season. All right, that's the Atlantic Basin. We're going to look at the Eastern Pacific coming up here in just a couple minutes. All right, welcome back to Hurricane Hub Live. Let's get over to the Eastern Pacific. Still pretty active out there. We've got Fausto, first hurricane of the season, Category 1 right now, in the far western portions of the Eastern Pacific. And then we've got another area, an area of interest here, a cluster of thunderstorms starting to gather closer to Central America, building into pretty much the wake of where Fausto originated from, and well off to the west, to the south and west of Hawaii. Another area here, this is going to be in the influence of the Central Pacific Basin, so not a worry for the East Pac. All right, let's talk about the odds of this developing here. This one's got a 0% chance over the next 48 hours, but then it shoots up to highly likely of developing into our next named storm within the next week. Again, this is a very favorable environment here. Alita and Fausto both came out of that general area, and there's plenty more energy to go there. So we've got Alita, that was a tropical storm. Fausto, Cat 1 up next would be Genevieve. Let's take a closer look here at Hurricane Fausto. Category 1 storm, just barely. 74 to 95 mile per hour winds on the Saffir-Simpson scale is Category 1. And it's not really expected to strengthen all that much more over the next couple of days. I mean, it could certainly overperform, but it doesn't matter. It's in the middle of the Pacific, not going to be affecting anybody. Now, we switch things up here and show what it looks like on visible satellite imagery. And if you look at it closely, you can see there's definitely probably some taking in of some drier air from the north here. And if we turn it over to the water vapor imagery, which will show up here in just a second, you'll see that it is starting to pull in some dry air from the north. Maybe it's just not going to work out for me tonight. But there is definitely some instances of some drier air on the water vapor imagery that's off to the north that's getting pulled into the system, kind of choking it off. So expected to become a Category 1, stay at Category 1. And then actually now, just a new adjustment here at 5 p.m. up to a Cat 2. 100 mile per hour winds by Friday afternoon. Now, it's taking a trajectory pretty much just off to the west, northwest slightly. There is Hawaii there. By the time we get to Sunday afternoon, it is starting to weaken to 75 mile per hour Category 1. But we'll see if this makes it close to Hawaii. Again, it's going to be encountering some slightly cooler air. Cooler water temperatures, I should say. That should keep it on a weakening trend, but even if it's a tropical storm, it could bring some rain over to Hawaii. So our scoreboard, we're able to update it. We've got 2 now in the Atlantic, 6 named storms in the Eastern Pacific, and we just knocked in our first hurricane of the season for the Eastern Pacific. All right, that's the latest in the East Pac. We'll see you right after a quick break. Welcome back. Florida's emergency management officials are standing by and monitoring Tropical Storm Bertha. Copeland Welch has details from the Florida Panhandle, where the system was already bringing bands of heavy rain on Monday.
Blue skies and calm surf won't be sticking around much longer. Lately, in the last couple of updates, we're starting to see some deep convection starting to wrap around the center, which we hadn't formed up until this point. So we're starting to see the system get a little bit better organized, but right now it's still only about 1,005 millibars, which is a relatively weak system. It's trying to get its act together. It's not there just yet.
For local businesses like Making Time Fishing Charter, business relies on calm seas.
Well, these things are kind of expected, but we don't like it. But it'll probably knock out a couple days for us. And, every day out here counts because you can't make them up for sure, So once everybody goes home from vacation, then you lose those days and they don't come back,
Many boats hit the water Monday morning, including Bill Harrison. He's been fishing the waters in Northwest Florida for 15 years.
When we first left out around 6 a.m. It was actually nice and smooth. Then the wind started kicking up around 7:30. Then we started having a real hard push and wind around 8. And then it just progressively got stronger as it came along. So luckily I went east and made it a good drive home, a good trip home.
Patrick Maddox is the director of public safety for Okaloosa County. He says the best advice he can give: stay alert.
Don't discount the storm until the threat is past. We never turn our back on a system in the Gulf, so just in case things were to change. We didn't expect much from Sally when it came through, and next thing you know, we're getting a phone call at 1 o'clock in the morning saying, hey, what are you guys doing? Might want to wake up. It's going to change. So never turn your back on a storm until the threat is past, and always use any system like this as a walkthrough, as a rehearsal for when you actually have to activate.
Now, homeowners along the Mississippi coast are still recovering from June flood damage, and now they're preparing for another storm. Let's hear from some people impacted by these back-to-back severe weather hits.
Some coast homeowners are still recovering from June flood damage, now wondering how much rain is on the way, and families are scrambling to protect what's left.
Luckily, it only got in my garage, and I'm doing the work right now. Just got 11 inches in my garage, and I'm repairing the sheetrock and the damage now.
Cliff Butts has lived in Gulfport's Greenview neighborhood for 25 years, and last month's storms flooded him for the first time. Butts believes drainage problems played a major role and says there's only so much homeowners can do on their own.
I don't see how I can protect my whole house, unless they fix the drainage or at least clean the drains out or do something to help us.
Delaney Waltman lives on the Biloxi River and says recovery started once the water receded.
Some of the parts of it we have absolutely no control over, and that's one thing that you learn living out here on the river is you can't control it. It's going to do what it's going to do, and you just have to wait and see and then recover as needed.
Now Waltman is moving supplies, vehicles, and anything else he can to higher ground.
The biggest thing we would have to do is all the stuff underneath the house that we've had for the recovery, all the bleach and all the food and drinks that we have for the volunteers. We'd have to pick all that up and, of course, move the vehicles back up the roadway if that happens.
Volunteers with Samaritan's Purse are helping Waltman tear out damaged drywall before more rain arrives.
The storms come and the storms go, and so we kind of have to go along with them and see what happens, but we always want to be ready. One of our mottos is being flexible, and in this kind of work we try to be flexible and change plans on the spur of the moment.
Program manager Gabe Mowdy says the team planned to leave August 15th, but they'll stay longer if needed. Residents are hoping no more flooding comes their way so they don't have to start over.
All right, stick around. Tropical Trivia is after a quick break. All right, welcome back. Tonight's tropical trivia question is, I drew comparisons between Bertha and another storm from 2019. Which storm was it that I referred to? Was it Dorian, Barry, Beryl, or Bethany? I'll have the answer for you tomorrow night on HHL. Now, that'll do it for us tonight on HHL. Remember, we are here Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern. And don't forget to download the 13 News Now Hurricane Guide. It's got information on supplies you should have on hand, emergency numbers you might need, and a whole lot more. We'll see you back here tomorrow night at 8.